Test, 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 test. One, two, hello. Test, 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 test. Oh, hang on. Test, 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 test. Yeah, there we go. All right. Well, good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight for men's leadership, and I'm excited about what we have in front of us tonight. So thanks for being here. Thanks for joining. I know several guys are on sick and they're joining us online tonight. So thanks for joining us. I just remembered though, I did not send them the questions, so I will try to send some of you the questions. If you don't know. If you don't have the questions or get the questions, text me and I will send them to you. But shamelessly here tonight, what I want to do, what I want to accomplish in this is that we get to build iron sharpening iron relationships. Okay, so a lot of what we're going to be doing tonight is going to be around your table. I want you to get to know one another. I want you to push each other, but also if you can commit right now to being vulnerable, that'll be a game changer for tonight. Okay, so commit to being vulnerable, commit to sharing what are you really struggling with, what are you really going through, and that'll be a game changer in what you get out of tonight. So please do that. We are going to start off because of that, right? We're going to start off around the tables with an icebreaker. Here's the icebreaker for you. And so actually, if somebody would at each table, if you'd be willing to be kind of the fearless leader in the front, in the middle of the table, there's a list of questions. The icebreaker's on there. All the questions are on there. All that stuff's there. If you would be willing to be the table, just be the table leader. You don't have to be the expert. Just be the leader. But at the very end, though, through the last questions, if you'd write down the answers on the back of the page, write down every person's name that's in at your table, and write down their application. So everybody gets an application, so be thinking about what is your application? What's one thing you're going to apply to your life over the course of the next couple of weeks? Those have been fun for me to just even pray through for you. And so if you would, whoever's the table leader, that's the expectation. If you could do that, would be wonderful. So around your table, what's something, this is the icebreaker, what's something you worked hard to build, accomplish, or purchase that required just as much or more effort to maintain it as it did to achieve it or get it? And why was that the case? Ready, go. All right, if we want to wrap it up, okay. Does anybody want to share what one of theirs is? What's something that took you just as much effort to maintain once you had it, that did actually the effort to put into it getting it? Anybody have something you want to share? I heard a couple funny ones. It was good. Yeah. Your marriage, there you go. I heard that a couple different times around the room. That's good. Yep, that's awesome. Yep, takes a lot of maintenance, right? It's not just once and done, like I love you and we're good. If that changes, I'll let you know. That doesn't work, right? Yep, yeah, good one. Very good. Anyone else?
Oh, we said kids.
Kids?
It's real easy to make a kid.
That maintenance part is a little different, isn't it? Yeah, kids, that's a good one. Yep, nice. All right, anyone else? What's that? Your dog? That was easy to get, huh? Yeah, hard work training, all the obedience stuff. Oh yeah, fun stuff. Yeah. Anything else? Business? Yeah, easy to start, easy-ish, easier to start than to maintain and keep going. Yeah. Yep, absolutely. Yeah, that's good. Good. Okay, if you got your Bibles, we're going to be in Nehemiah again. We've been using Nehemiah. We've been digging into it over the course of the last several months and learning a lot of leadership principles from the book of Nehemiah. All right, we've dug into things like discernment and conviction, development, strategy, vision development, facing opposition, battling distractions. Last month, if you remember, if you were here with us last month, we focused on building walls and gates. Right, the walls around Jerusalem were important because walls are what keep out. So walls are the things that we put into our lives to say, no, I'm going to intentionally keep this stuff out of my life. But there's gates around the city that are very important and very strategic because the gates determine what we allow into our lives. Okay, so the walls are what we put in place to keep things out. The gates are what we put in place to allow things in. So not everything gets in. A city without gates ends up having no walls at some point, right? So you've got to decide what comes in and what comes out. But what I want to talk about tonight is once we put in all this effort to build the walls, put the right walls strategically in place, we're keeping the right things out, we're letting the right things in, it's healthy this way now, okay? What do we do now to guard the gains? Okay, what do we do now to protect what's inside here, this culture? Because the only reason we build walls and build gates is to make this part flourish. You with me? So once we have that in place, what are we going to do to guard the gains? Now, Nehemiah, he could have rebuilt the wall, and we'd be sitting here talking about a story in history where there's this guy who spent all this time rebuilding this wall, and he didn't put any gates in place, he didn't put any leaders in place, and so the walls just fell right back down again, right? Their enemies just did the same thing to them, they just plundered them, and it's just the same process over and over again. But we're talking about Nehemiah because of what he implemented once the walls and the gates were in place, to guard the gains. Okay, so Nehemiah rebuilt the wall in how many days? 50, somebody said it, 52 days, okay? 52 days to rebuild a wall that had been destroyed for over 140 years, okay? So 52 days, they rebuild the wall, and then Ezra gets up, the priest gets up, and he starts reading the law. Like, talk about like the driest message you've ever heard. He just starts reading the law, and they start weeping. They start weeping, they start confessing of their sin, all kinds of crazy stuff happens. And then in Nehemiah chapter 10, they make this covenant with God. They make this covenant with God saying, we are going to fight for purity, we're going to fight for innocence, we're going to fight to be faithful, we're going to fight for justice, we're going to fight for all of these things. It's this beautiful thing, and I'm not going to read through all of that, okay? But if you get to the end of Nehemiah chapter 10, we're going to jump into Nehemiah 11 tonight. But at the very end, the very last sentence there in Nehemiah chapter 10 is he says, we will not neglect the house of our God. Right? We are going to fight for what God has given us, what God has provided. We are going to fight for it. Okay, so now we're going to jump into Nehemiah chapter 11, and we're just going to read verses 1 through 4 here real quick. So Nehemiah chapter 11, starting in verse 1. He says, now the leaders of the people settled in Jerusalem, And the rest of the people cast lots to bring out one out of every 10 of them to live in Jerusalem, the holy city. Hang on to that. I'm gonna come back to that in just a minute. While the remaining 9 were to stay in their own towns. The people commended all who volunteered to live in Jerusalem. These are the provincial leaders who settled in Jerusalem. Now, some Israelites, priests, Levites, temple servants, and descendants of Solomon's servants lived in the towns of Judah, each on their own property in the various towns, while other people from both Judah and Benjamin lived in Jerusalem. And then there's a long list of people, okay, that all settled in Jerusalem. I'm not gonna bore you or even try to pronounce half of those names, okay? So I'm not gonna go through that. Here's what I want to focus on though, is right now, they've built these walls and these gates around Jerusalem. And now half of the city is vacant. Because when the walls were down, the people went elsewhere to make lives for themselves outside of the city. Places where they would be safe. They wouldn't be targeted. They wouldn't be the focal point. So they settled in a lot of the surrounding towns and a lot of the surrounding areas. And a lot of them made even villages of their own. And so now what's happening is there's a lot of people that are volunteering and saying, hey, I want to go back and I want to live in Jerusalem. That's where my roots are. That's where my home is. My heart is there. That's where I want to go. But not many did. So what they said is out of everyone who left, what they did is they picked 1 out of every 10 to return. Right? Can you imagine that? You being one of the 10, right? Your family's all settled in a town way over here. You've been there for 100 years, right? And then all of a sudden, the lot gets cast to you, and you've got to return to Jerusalem. That stinks, honestly. Okay, that's wild. That's a hardship you're imposing on a lot of different people, and thousands of different families are experiencing this because they're saying we need Jerusalem to be occupied. Because Nehemiah understands the vacant parts of the town are trouble. The vacant parts of the town are where outsiders or where trouble can lurk. And it's not going to be good to have vacant parts of the town. We need it occupied. We need it filled in. This is a really important thing, okay? So I want us to get something here, okay? Leaders ask people to do what they don't want to do in order to fight for a better future for everyone. Okay, I want to say that one more time. Leaders ask people to do what they don't want to do in order to fight for a better future for everyone. So Nehemiah has to be that guy. That guy that asks the hard question or just says, hey, would you be willing to come back to Jerusalem to do something you don't really want to do for the betterment of all the people, of the entire community, not just you and your family. I understand that'd be easier, more convenient, more comfortable if you stay where you're at. But would you be willing? Because we're fighting for a bigger cause here. There's a bigger picture thing going on here. It's not just about you and your family. This is long term. This is generational stuff. Would you be willing to give your life? Would you be willing to uproot your family, to move, to relocate for something bigger, something better for the future of everyone? That's not easy. But as leaders, that's what we're called to do. We're called to do the stuff that's not easy, that nobody else is willing to do, ask the questions that nobody's willing to ask in order for the betterment, for the strength of everybody. Does that make sense? Okay, so right now, you've got some table questions. First one is, why do you think it's important for people to actually live inside the city after the wall was built? So I'll give you like 10 minutes around your table. Ready, go. try to wrap up in the next minute. All right. I want to bring us back together here real quick. But here's the thing. Nehemiah needs help from others outside of Jerusalem to help him maintain what he just spent all this time and energy rebuilding, right? So he has to make the hard ask, and then he also even has to demand that some come against their will into the city. But then what he does is, get this. If you have your Bibles there, the very next verse, or if you go to from verse 25 of chapter 11, clear on through chapter 12, verse 26, there's a long list of names. And what I just encourage you to do, don't read them, okay, but just scan through that list of names real quick. Now I'm going to jump out on a limb and just guess that you didn't actually recognize any of those names. Okay? You don't know any of those people. And a lot of times, a list of people's names that we don't know seems worthless, seems meaningless. Okay? But if your name or your dad's name or your grandpa's name or your child's name was on that list, you would read through that list and you would be looking for your kid's name, right? So this list really, really matters if your name is on the list. And so what Nehemiah does is, for the next chapter, he makes a list of all the people that came back from outside of Jerusalem and came into Jerusalem who are willing to make that hard move, right? That's tough. That's a big ask, okay? So he makes note of all of those people, puts them in this line. And man, if you saw your name on that covenant, because think about this, he documents all of this. It's all public. It's not just in our Bibles. It's written down. They're documenting all of these people. And if you see your name in the midst of that covenant, what does that do in you? What does that develop inside of you? Think about it. Let me hear. What's that? Pride? Okay. Yeah. I'm actually going to write some of these down. Okay. Say them out. Here we go. Pride? Commitment? Absolutely. I'm in. My name's up there. It's, oh man. Okay, here we go. Something. Whew. I don't know. There's an N in there too. Whew. Man, okay. You want the marker? I can't even read my own writing most of the time, so this is hard. Okay, anyway, pride, commitment, what else? Identity, heritage, absolutely. Yeah. What else? Responsibility? Absolutely. Anything else?
Personal sacrifice.
Okay. It's a reminder of the sacrifice we made. Yeah, absolutely. Motivation? You see all those names on that list develops kind of a camaraderie, right? A sense of community of like, hey, we're in this together. I know it cost you, it cost me, it costs all of us. There's mutual sacrifice in this. Yeah? Okay, what else? Here we go again. M's. Stay away from M's. Any words without M's? Man. All right, give me one more or two more.
It's just a reminder that those actual people, there was history there.
Yeah, yeah.
Kind of give you that indication that actually happened.
Yeah. Awesome. And that's great. Okay, here's something that happens. And I want us to understand this as men, because we can forget to do these kinds of things. We can minimize or reduce what something like this means when you document every person and their sacrifice, the sacrifice that they were willing to make for something, for a dream that you had that God had given you, and they said, okay, we want to be part of this. And yeah, it produces all of this inside of them. But what we can do is we can tend to forget to make the list, right? And acknowledge what they did, acknowledge the sacrifices that they made. But this is what it stirs up inside of each and every one of them, okay? So there's a lot of stuff happening inside of this passage, inside of these people. So inside the walls of Jerusalem, right, you've got a bunch of people who are misplaced. They're out of place. Their heritage, right, is they lived here. The walls were destroyed. They've been displaced. They're all over the place. They've reestablished for 142 years. They've been in other places, and they've established businesses. They've established communities. Their whole family is in these places. They've established trading partners and all kinds of different things. And then they're being asked to come back in here. And now, when you do that, when you take people that have been uprooted out of what they know, there's actually new life that can be spurred up inside of them. Okay, one of the most vulnerable places we're at in life is in a point of transition. It's one of the toughest places in life, but it's also one of the most powerful, because it's in a point of transition we actually have an opportunity for a new start. Many of those people outside here, they were worshiping other gods, or they were doing things that they shouldn't be doing. And Nehemiah says, inside these walls and inside these gates, this is how we're going to live. This stuff stays outside the walls. This stuff is allowed inside the walls. So not only are you committing to move you or your family back into here, but you're also committing to live like we are committed to live. Changes everything, right? So the covenant that they're signing is a big, big deal. They are committing to all the things. They're fighting for purity. They're fighting for innocence. They're fighting for faithfulness. They're fighting for obedience to God. They're fighting for all of these. And they're saying, I'm in. Okay? Now, the lot might have been cast to them, and they may not have wanted to go. But when they write their name on that covenant, it matters. Okay? They're all in. And as men, we've got to understand this. We for some of us, we need to re-enlist ourselves. We need to make a transition in our lives. We need to do something to reinvigorate some of the courage that we need to say, no, this is who I am. This is what I've committed to fight for. This is what God is calling me to. I'm not going to just be displaced. I'm not going to just be a man wandering around, just a nomad looking for my place in this world. Like, no, I know who God called me to be. I know what he's called me to fight for, and I'm going to fight for that. Okay, so around your table, you guys they got some more group questions to dig in to the tension of this, being displaced and coming back into and fighting for culture. So ready, set, go. Try to wrap up in the next minute. All right. Okay, as you guys got to start to think about legacy and stuff. Anyone willing to share? Like, what would you say? What is one thing you want to be remembered as? What's kind of legacy do you want to leave behind? Whether it's in yourself personally, your family, your work, your ministry, whatever. Like, anyone willing to share? Go ahead.
Someone who fights for obedience.
Fights for obedience? Awesome. That's great. Anyone else? I won't make you share. It's okay. You don't have to. But there are so many things that we can fight for in this life, and there are some that matter and some that don't. I've shared this with you before, but one of my favorite John Maxwell quotes, and I'll probably butcher it all to pieces, okay? But this is a paraphrased version, so don't shoot me. But someday you will be remembered, or your life will be reduced to one sentence. Choose now what that will be. Like, you get to decide now what you will be remembered as. But you get to choose now. What you're doing now, today, the steps you're making now, the decisions you're making now, the things we're doing or not doing, will actually become that one sentence that people remember us by. So think about that. Start with the end in mind and think about what are the decisions I'm making? What do they turn out to be? Okay, so after remembering the people that built the wall, built the wall around the city, and then acknowledging all the people that came in and the covenant that they signed, right? Then here's what Nehemiah does. I love it. He celebrates. He celebrates. If you got your Bibles, open up to Nehemiah chapter 12. We're going to pick up in verse 27. So it's through 26 that he gets this long list of names, right? And then we pick it up in verse 27 here, and I want you to notice here, Nehemiah goes to great lengths in order to celebrate. And he does it through worship. So I'm going to jump all around, because if you'll notice the parts that I skip. There's a long list of names that I'm not even going to pretend to know how to say, okay? So I'll try to keep giving you the verses, but if you see the list of names, I'm right at the end of those names. So verse 27, at the dedication of the wall of Jerusalem, the Levites were sought out from where they lived and were brought to Jerusalem to celebrate joyfully the dedication with songs of thanksgiving and with the music of cymbals and harps and lyres. The musicians also were brought together from the region around Jerusalem, from all of the villages, right? I'm not going to name those. For the musicians had built villages for themselves around Jerusalem. When the priests and Levites had purified themselves ceremonially, they purified the people, the gates, and the wall. I had the leaders of Judah go up on top of the wall. I also assigned 2 large choirs to give thanks. One to proceed on top of the wall to the right, toward the dung gate. And half the leaders of Judah followed them. Okay, jump down over to verse 35. As well as some priests with trumpets, and also a bunch of people, jump down to verse 36, with musical instruments prescribed by David, the man of God. Ezra, the teacher of the law, led the procession. At the fountain gate, they continued directly up the steps of the city of David on the ascent to the wall and passed above the site of David's palace to the water gate on the east. The second choir proceeded in the opposite direction. I followed them on top of the wall, together with half of the people. Jump down to verse 40. The two choirs gave thanks, then took their places in the house of God. So did I, together with half the officials, as well as the priests. Jump down to verse 43. And on that day they offered great sacrifices, rejoicing because God had given them great joy. The women and the children also rejoiced. The sound of rejoicing in Jerusalem, get this, could be heard far away. At that time, men were appointed to be in charge of the storerooms for the contributions, first fruits, and tithes from the fields around the towns. They were to bring into the storerooms the portions required by the law for the priests and the Levites. For Judah was pleased with the ministering priests and Levites. They performed the service of their God and the service of purification. They also, as did also the musicians and gatekeepers, according to the commands of David and his son Solomon. For long ago, in the days of David and Asaph, there had been directors for the musicians and for the songs of praise and thanksgiving to God. So in the days of Zerubbabel and Nehemiah, all Israel continued the daily portions for the musicians and the gatekeepers. They also set aside the portion for the other Levites, and the Levites set aside the portion for the descendants of Aaron. What I want you to see in this, there's an entire chapter dedicated to the focus on worship. Okay, he has two choirs, and then all these musicians, all these people that have given their lives, and they're actually paid, they're supported to just sing worship. That's it. Okay, and worship is so important. And honestly, if we're honest, as men, this is something, not all personalities, okay? There's some of us, we party hard, okay? We celebrate well, okay? But for the most part, men are typically known for not celebrating well. We want the next success. When we get the next success, we move on. That's behind us. It's going on to the next one and the next one and the next one, right? I am so guilty of that. My wife has to constantly stop me and say, hey, let's celebrate that. Okay, let's this is a big deal. Let's celebrate that before we move on to the next thing. I was like, but that's old news now. We got a new vision. There's new things in front of us, and we've got to celebrate these things. But here's what he does though, is he does it with worship. I love the emphasis on worship. The worship and celebration are so crucial because what worship does is it reminds us of who did the work. Get this, the rebuilding of the wall, it took hard labor. It took people stacking rocks, big rocks, bigger than they were, right? It took an entire village to do this, but God made it possible. And worship keeps success from becoming pride. When we worship God, now all the things that we accomplish in life, they're not, hey, look at me. Look what I did. But when I will stop and I'll worship, then I'm reminded, wow, God, look what you did. Thanks for allowing me to be part of that. That's significant. That matters. That means something. And that's humbling. When we understand who God is and we understand who we are, and then we're able to see the things he allows us to be part of, that's humbling. That doesn't build arrogance. That builds humility, but it also builds courage, right? To be able to be the men that God called us to be able to take that next ground, okay? But also another thing worship does is it unites the community. It brings people together. When we're in communal worship, when we're all worshiping and praising God, there's a unity in that. Right? When we gather here on a Sunday morning and we're singing out our hearts to God, there's a beauty in the unity in that. We might not, actually, I'm not going to say we might not. We aren't the same. Even in just this room, you guys are all different. You all have different hobbies, interests, activities, everything, right? And as a matter of fact, many of you wouldn't even be hanging out with each other if it wasn't for God, right? You wouldn't be even in the same room. But because of God, we're all in the same room. And there's such a beauty in that. When we focus on God, when we lift our hearts to him, it doesn't matter what our pasts are. It doesn't matter what our backgrounds are, our hobbies, our interests, or any of that kind of stuff. We are united in Christ. And worship does that, right? But worship also reminds us of God's faithfulness. Look what he has done. Look what he has done. And if he has done that, think of what he will do. And we have to be reminded of the past. Look at what he has done. This is his track record. This is his consistent. He has so faithfully done this over and over and over again. So I can trust him as we commit to move forward. Right? And worship also, it helps me commit to keep going in the same direction, to keep trusting God. Right? I know he's done this. I'm going to keep going. And when I worship, I'm reminding myself, okay, God, this is worth it. This matters. This is significant. It's not about me. This is about you. This is bigger than me. So I want to say this. A leader doesn't just build. A lot of times we think a leader is the visionary, is the one that just gets things done, right? A leader doesn't just build. A leader sets systems in place to guard the gains. Once you've built something great, you don't want to see it fall apart. Right? That's worthless. But we got to put systems in place to keep it healthy, to keep it strong, right? To guard the gains, to focus the people and prepare for a better future. So what Nehemiah was doing here, as he's pulling people into the vacant parts of the city, he's saying, hey, there's a better future, but it requires you to be part of it. And he's inviting people into a better future. And honestly, as human beings, we like to have our own future. We like to have our own plan, our own process, our own stuff. And as human beings, we can be going 1,000 different directions. But it is powerful. It is powerful, not only when men, but when families, when communities unite and we all go the same direction. That's powerful. That is a force to be reckoned with. And so that's what Nehemiah is doing here. Is he's focusing them on worship. He organizes 2 choirs to march on top of the walls around the city in opposite directions. Can you imagine all of the musicians, all of the choir, all of the people singing, the people playing instruments? This is a big production. And all of the musicians that used to be paid, now they're paid again. He said, no, you're going to be paid and you're just going to sing praise. You are going to worship. You're going to walk around the town and you're going to worship constantly because you're going to remind us of who God is. You're going to remind us of this great feat that, yeah, it was hard work. We all got to be part of it, but God made this happen. It was a powerful process, okay? So leaders, as men, that's what God is calling us to do. It's not about us. The work God is calling you to is way bigger than you. And if we draw all the attention to ourselves, we miss it. We miss it. And all the stuff that we do, it'll turn to rubble someday. But if we can point people to God, and we can point our own mind and our own soul back to God and be reminded that, whoa, this is him. He made this possible and he allowed me to be part of it. That will create such beautiful humility and courage at the same time inside of us. And that's what the watching world needs. Is men with humility and with courage, with a God confidence of saying, no, he alone is willing and he alone is able. And I'm his. I'll follow him. If he's in it, I'll do whatever. I'll ask the hard ask. I'll invite people into things that are really uncomfortable to them because God's in this. This isn't just a human thing. This isn't just a me thing. I'm not asking you to build my kingdom. I'm inviting you into a God thing. And so as men, we have a decision to make. Like are we going to live? Are we going to build our own kingdom? Or are we going to be part of advancing God's kingdom? And a lot of that is dependent upon worship. Worship is the tool that keeps reminding us, no, this is all about him. And it's not about me. It's a key tool God uses throughout Scripture. Now, we're going to break into our table times one last time here. But before we do that, a couple things. First of all, if you want to read ahead in Nehemiah, Nehemiah chapter 13 is where we're going to be next month, okay? Next month will be our last one of the year, okay? So this next conversation, this last conversation is probably one of my favorite, okay? We're going to be looking at the power of conviction. So Nehemiah leaves, and then he comes back, and he has to have some hard conversations. Why do we do that? What does that look like? We're going to look at that next month as we wrap things up. Then finally, here's one thing I want to share with you guys here, but a date to put on your calendars. We are going to do a men's camp out in September. Now, this is you give me some feedback on this maybe, but we are going to plan it over Labor Day weekend. Okay, so Friday, Saturday, Sunday. of Labor Day weekend. Okay, so we'll be back. We'll be back early on that. We'll be back on that Sunday. But so a men's camp out that weekend. If you're interested in being part of that, like whether it's with grilling or prep stuff or fishing stuff or rec stuff or any of that kind of stuff, please let me know. But we're in the planning stages of that right now. We're going to be at the Highlight Youth Camp, right on Highlight Reservoir up there. So that'll be where it's at and the date for it. So mark those dates, put those in your calendars. So, all right. And then table leaders, if you would, applications. And before you wrap up, please pray for each other. But thanks so much for being here, guys. Love you to death. So ready, break into your tables.